Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is Rankings Day, my favorite day of the week, and we're going to start out with the quarterbacks this lovely week 13 of the fantasy football season, and we have the playoffs right around the corner, so it's time for that final push. And I do have a couple of quick notes. First of all, these are my initial rankings. Rankings are always going to be fluid throughout the week, and especially once we get to my wide receiver and running back rankings, those will have the biggest changes. These are going to be pretty close to what they end up being by the end of the week, but I'm sure there will be some changes, especially given any kind of big news that comes out throughout the week. Additionally, just some quick explanations of what you're seeing on here. Over here, the difficulty. This is the difficulty rating of the matchup. It is a little bit different than what you would see up on my projections, which are up on my website at www.theFFforge.com as of Thursday, and I have projections. I have an expected range, which is just like a single projection that you would normally see, except it's a range that we can expect them to score within this given week. And then there is a floor and a ceiling that I also project to give you a good idea if you're, shooting for the stars in a tough matchup, or if you just want to play it a little bit safe. You can compare those between a couple of guys and see what looks better. On there, I also have a player temperature gauge, which takes in more factors than what I have here, but this is a quite simplified version of that, which is, once again, just the difficulty rating, as is quite evident. And red is good, blue is bad, and then white would be a neutral matchup. Over here is the differential between what my ranking is and what the ECR is currently as of when I pulled these off of Fantasy Pros website in order to compare the ECRs, in order to figure out who I'm a little bit different with and who I should try to explain why I might recommend them more so than the experts or less so than the experts. And you can see who I'm about to be chatting about here. Then I do prefer tiers over, like, here's a top 12, because oftentimes the number 6 running back, for instance, is closer to the number 18 running back, for instance, than the number 1 to the number 8 running back. I think it works better with tiers, and this is what I have this color coding over here for. Now let's just get going to it, and my first tier of quarterbacks has 6 players, and that starts with Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and Tua Tagovailoa, who I have ranked 6th, going up against San Francisco. I don't really have anybody to talk about in here. No big surprises. This is pretty much in line with the ECR overall. If you did happen to have 2 of these guys, you need me to make an argument for somebody that I have, over somebody else that you're thinking of playing. Feel free to ask those types of questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer them, and of course that always helps the algorithms if there are more comments on the videos, so that helps too. Let's move on to my second tier of quarterbacks, which starts at quarterback number 7 with Geno Smith, followed by Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Jimmy Garoppolo. And these guys I'm still quite confident in playing for one reason or another. Jimmy Garoppolo sneaks in here compared to the ECR. As you can see, I have him 4 spots ahead of the ECR. I have him ranked 11th. The ECR and him is 15th. Going up against Miami, it's a really good matchup. Do like that. It's a little concerning with Christian McCaffrey being a little more limited. That does make this more of an average offense overall as far as Jimmy Garoppolo's upside goes. But I still expect to get 100% of Christian McCaffrey, even if it's for a limited amount of snaps. And so that still helps the offense all in all. And going up against Miami, the sky is the limit when you're playing against a team like Miami, who's probably going to put up a lot of points in the game and give you a lot of opportunities to try to do the same. Love Jimmy Garoppolo this week, and that's my argument for it. Now let's move on to my third tier here, which starts off at the quarterback 12 with Jared Goff, followed by Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson at 14, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Mike White, sneaking ahead of Kirk Cousins, who I have ranked 18th. And here's where you're going to see the biggest differences that I have with the ECR, starting right off at number 12 with Jared Goff, who I am also much higher on than the ECR. The ECR is currently at 16 on him. I have him ranked 4th, going up against Jacksonville, who's actually been a surprisingly positive matchup for quarterbacks, at least as of late. So I definitely like that matchup. That, of course, influences this a little bit. It was nice to see Jared Goff return a little bit to form last week, hoping that offense can continue to be more TJ Hawkinson than it has been mostly since he's left them. And they have they're getting Swift healthier and healthier, so I'm hopeful there. And there's just a couple of tough matchups here, guys who maybe don't have a lot of upside, guys who maybe we don't have a whole lot of trust for in this week, and also are in a very not great matchup. And that's going to be right here with Deshaun Watson, as I was pointing to, who I've ranked 14th. The ECR on him is 11. So I have Deshaun Watson 3 spots behind the ECR. I'm being a little cautious with this. This guy has not played football for 2 years. That's a long time. There's going to be some rust that needs to be knocked off, and this is probably a great game for that because they're going to be able to run the ball up and down Houston all day long. At least that is the expectation, that is the hope. That's what Cleveland does. So there should be a limited amount of Deshaun Watson usage. That has been the main reason why Houston has not been an excellent matchup for fantasy points across wide receivers and quarterbacks all season long. Teams don't really need to throw the ball or score a lot. They just need to win the game, and they know that they'll be able to do that by the end of the game, most likely. So it just comes down to the rust and being a very limited upside type of matchup here for Deshaun Watson. I think it's a little bold to say he's kind of a must start there, being in the top 12 in single quarterback leagues, but he's a great quarterback. He has the top 4 or 5 type potential. Now let's move on to Tom Brady, who I also have 3 spots behind the ECR. I have him at 15th. The ECR on him is 12th. I've been a little bit behind the ECR all season with Tom Brady, and I would say for the most part, that's probably worked more in favor for me than not. Going up against New Orleans this week, it's a pretty neutral matchup. I do think that offense has been looking better in the last 2 games, as has the end result for Tom Brady, but there's still not this great ceiling that some of these other players have. I just don't think there's some sort of huge breakout game in the forecast here for Tom Brady. So it's really nothing against Tom Brady. It's just liking some other guys more. That's all. Now let's move on to Aaron Rodgers, who I currently have 7 spots ahead of the ECR, and this may be in part due to the fact that Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love are both going to be in this list because of Aaron Rodgers' injury late. There are some unknowns about his availability in this upcoming week. However, he did come out this week or today on Tuesday and say that he is expecting to play, that the x-rays that he had were encouraging. At this point, I'm pretty much expecting him to be playing this weekend. Does have some good matchups starting up this week with Chicago for the rest of the season. Don't know if he'll play out the rest of the season. We'll see. I do believe that's more of a pain tolerance injury than nothing else. Wouldn't mind seeing him rest up. I'm sure he'll be back next year. Maybe not. If he's playing football again, then I think he'll be back next year. So, it's too good of a matchup, even with being banged up and not having a great season for Aaron Rodgers, for me to not at least expect some sort of floor like a Tom Brady has. Now let's move on to Kirk Cousins. I actually have Mike White rated the same as the ECR here. That's a little nerve-wracking putting trust into him. I did nerf his stats compared to last week in my projections just a little bit because that was an excellent week. Don't expect that again, but hopefully it won't be a horrible game and this is going to be a good matchup for him. Now let's get on to Kirk Cousins, since I didn't really need to talk about Mike White. As far as Kirk Cousins go, I have him 5 spots behind the ECR. I have him ranked 18th. The ECR on him is at 13th, going up against the New York Jets, and that has pretty much everything to do with it. It's a tough defense to pass against, and I don't know that, at least in recent history, Kirk Cousins has really shown that we can totally trust that he'll be able to overcome a really tough defense. That offense has it in them to overcome it. He could have a perfectly fine game. Probably not a huge game, but who knows? That could end up being a high-scoring game. That's always possible. I just would feel safer with some of these other guys, and we'll see if by the end of the week if I still have Mike White rated above Kirk Cousins or not, but such a difference in defenses there in the matchup, and given what Mike White did show us last week, all those weapons around him, I think they could probably make some moves again. So We'll see. Now let's move on to my fourth tier of quarterbacks. We're into the guys who really hoping to not have to start. We're starting to look at potential DFS value type guys usually in this area, but 2 quarterback leagues do exist, and sometimes just circumstances require someone to dig deep at a position. So here are my fourth tier quarterbacks. Starting at quarterback 19, I have Taylor Heinicke ranked there. Then I have Marcus Mariota at 20, followed by Kenny Pickett, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, Andy Dalton, and Jordan Love ranked to 25th if he were to play. I don't dislike Jordan Love this week if he were to play. I think he looked light years above his first few years in the league this preseason. And yes, that is only preseason, but believe me, we would know if he still looked like he looked in the past. He had a rough start to his career for a few reasons. Part of that, I think, being just a lack of a training camp due to COVID and getting the first time getting tossed in there, just doing terrible, looking terribly, just not prepared for it mentally. Probably physically fine, though. So I think he has all of the tools to do it, and he seems to be better mentally. Going up against Chicago, I like him. I have him ranked 25th. The ECR on him is 31st, so I have him 6 spots ahead of the ECR. Currently, don't know what that would look like either. That's obviously also stunted due to Aaron Rodgers if he were to play, but we don't need to spend too much time on that. It looks like Aaron Rodgers will play, but don't mind Jordan Love in a desperate situation. Then I have Ryan Tannehill and Matt Ryan here. You see a little bit less gray there in this next tier. I couldn't quite decide which tier to put them in. It felt weird not to include him in with like Jordan Love, but then it also started to feel weird not to have Russell Wilson in there, and I'm like, I needed some sort of cutoff. So I created their own little tier, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, and actually it really came down to these matchups that they have going up against Philadelphia and Dallas. 2 really tough matchups, not good matchups, but matchups that, just like we saw with Green Bay last week, although those points got spread out at quarterback a little bit, you can end up getting quite a few fantasy points, although it doesn't happen most weeks. I don't mind those matchups, so Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, not something I want to mess with, but would it be a shock if they had big weeks? Not really. Now, here's my final tier. I don't know, what is a 6th tier? These are the guys who I really, really don't want to play, even in a 2-quarterback league. Russell Wilson starts at the top of that, ranked at 28th right now. That's where I have him ranked, going up against Baltimore, so it's not a great matchup, but teams have done it. Then Trevor Siemian, is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. Kyle Allen and Bryce Perkins to wrap that up. And obviously Russell Wilson would be the odd man out of this group, but is he? He hasn't shown it this year, so he wouldn't be the worst in the world. But not somebody I want to mess with. So that is it for the quarterbacks. The tight ends video should come out in a couple of hours, or is already out depending on when you're seeing this. So please check out the other position videos or any videos that you may have some guys to make some decisions with. If I don't talk about your players, feel free to drop a comment to ask about them. Ask why I may not have really liked them compared to the ECR, whatever. And or you can check out my rankings up on the website and my final rankings. I tweak them all week at some point here and there. Will be here on YouTube live with me 1 hour prior to kickoff, where you can come and ask any start-sit questions that you have, or you could not talk to me at all. I have the rankings right up over here on the screen filled out for you to see. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. Goodbye.